Everybody, and thank you very much for joining us on this Audit Committee membership, Audit Committee meeting. I don't know, we normally go around and introduce ourselves for those people who are not aware of who we are, as this is being streamed. It might be as well if we do just go round. So if I can just ask you to introduce yourselves, and we'll try and do it in alphabetical order. So I'll start with Rachel. Hello, Rachel. Rachel's not on at the moment. Maria, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Maria G and I am a councillor for Westcott.
Thank you very much. Diane.
Good evening, I'm Diane King and I represent Emmondon's ward.
Thank you. And Angus.
Good evening, Angus Ross, working without ward.
And Daniel.
Good evening, Daniel Sargent from Champstead North.
And finally, Imogen.
Good evening, Imogen Shepherd Bay, and I represent Embrook.
Thank you very much. And I'm Bill Soane, and I represent Loddon in Woodley. So good evening to you all.
Sorry about that, Chair. I couldn't unmute for some reason. But I'm Rachel Burgess, and I represent Norreys Ward.
Good evening. Okay, and we have some representatives with us tonight from various departments. So could I just ask Andrew, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, good evening, members. I'm Andrew Moulton. I'm the Assistant Director Governance.
Thank you very much. And Sally, is Sally Watkins with us?
Hi all, yes, I'm Sally Watkins and I'm the Assistant Director for Digital and Change.
Thank you very much. And Keely.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Keely Clements. I'm the new Director for Communities, Insight and Change. Pleased to meet you all.
Good evening. And Catherine?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Catherine Hickman. I'm the Lead Specialist for Audit and Investigation.
Thank you very much. And Amanda?
Good evening. I'm Amanda Laws. I'm a Senior Specialist for the Audit Investigation team.
And not forgetting Madeline.
Madeline Shopland, I'm clerk to the committee.
Thank you very much. I don't think I've missed anybody. If I have, my apologies, and please let me know. Other than that,
hello, Chair. Hello, Chair.
Hello.
Hello.
I miss you.
Hello. Sorry, I'm not with the council. I'm your external audit manager. My name is Justine Thorpe. I'm from EY. And I'm standing in, well, I'm part of the team. Helen Thompson unfortunately couldn't make it this evening and sends her apologies.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair. I'm Bob Watson. I'm the Council's Head of Finance.
Oh, yes, sorry, forgot you. That's terrible.
If I'd done that, I would have come in the first place.
Yes, thanks very much. Okay, right, shall we start the meeting proper now? Do we have any apologies for absence?
Helen Thompson.
Thank you very much. And item 15 on the agenda, minutes of the previous meeting, which are on page 5 and extend to page 14 on the agenda. Can I confirm that those minutes are a true record of the meeting? And anybody who has any comments to make, would they please make them? Okay, I'll take that as a yes. Thank you very much. Item 16, declarations of interest. Does anybody need to declare any declaration of any interests? No? Okay, fine. Do we have any public questions?
No, Chair.
Thank you very much. And do we have any member questions?
No, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, we come on to item 19 on the agenda, which is an update on the progress of the year-end audit. And Helen Thompson and Bob Watson. I don't know who wishes to go first to present this, so please, amongst yourselves, choose. Is it Bob or Helen?
I can certainly introduce, Chair, and then Justine can jump in if she needs to put me right if I've gone wrong anywhere.
Thank you very much.
As it stands right now, we published our draft accounts at the end of September in accordance with at the end of August, in accordance with the government guidelines. and we have had them available for inspection during the statutory inspection period. The audit team from EY did some preliminary work prior to us publishing the draft accounts, and they're coming in, I think, next week, is it, Justine, to start in earnest and looking at our audit to enable us to produce our final accounts by the end of November, which again is a statutory deadline.
Yes, absolutely, Bob. And it was, I mean, the finance team are good. They only have excuse me, only have a finite amount of capacity. So although the planned audit was supposed to start on the 22nd of July, and to be fair, we have done somewhat preliminary work, as Bob said, but the finance department have been dealing with all the COVID payments, etc., etc. So we've got a second phase of the audit beginning on the 28th of September, and we're looking to report and finalise the end of the audit by the end of November this year. Sorry, I should have had my... So happy to take any questions on that, because that, I think in the agenda, it is literally a verbal update, because originally we would bring a report, but everything's been moved back because of COVID.
Okay, so this report won't be available until the end of November, so it won't make our next meeting, will it? Which is, change date, something around about the 20th of November, is it? If I'm right, Madeline? I can't remember now without looking.
That is the meeting that we'll be bringing the accounts to, hopefully in a final state.
Oh, it will?
It's to be signed off, yes, by committee.
Okay, thank you. 23rd of November, yeah. Oh, that's fine. Thanks very much. Okay.
Sorry, Chair, and we would like to bring our draft audit results report to that meeting as well.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Are there any questions? And I'll go through it again, asking our members if they have any questions in an alphabetical order. So I'll start with Rachel. Do you have any questions?
None from me, thank you.
Thank you very much. Maria G, Councillor Maria G.
Yes, I've just got one question. So I noticed that the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors has recently changed its advice about giving qualified or unqualified opinions on property values during the COVID period. And I'm just wondering whether for any properties that we had valued, either for impairment or as investment properties, whether we had managed to obtain a qualified or unqualified report on those assets.
Is it, sorry, who would like to answer? Bob, do you have any?
Yes.
Sorry, you've muted, Bob, I think.
Sorry, I took it off, turned it on again. Yes, obviously our accounts are published as at the 31st of March, which probably predates any impact of the COVID-19 impact on valuations. But what we have done is we will be doing an interim review to make sure nothing's changed as post-balance sheet events, which I think is the practice that the auditors have recommended we follow. So we have valuations done by our external valuers and by our internal team to give us evaluations for the accounts figures, but we will make comment in our narrative statement as to anything that might have changed significantly. And I also would be writing a going concern letter to the auditors to report to them whether the council is of going concern and what areas of concern we do have that might impact on our accounts valuations.
Yeah, I'm just wondering specifically, given the change in the RICS approach, whether the valuations were given with a qualified or unqualified report, given that the RICS has changed its opinion. Initially, it said that basically all the valuations, all the reports had to be qualified, and now they sort of loosened it a bit. So I'm just wondering, just specifically for those things. But thank you for the information about the going concern statement as well.
What I will do, I'm not a chartered surveyor. I will speak to our valuation team and find out what basis they had them on.
Okay, thank you.
May I just add to Bob's assertions there? Councillor G, you're absolutely right. COVID has thrown the PPE valuation into a level of uncertainty, as it has done pension asset valuations as well. So RICS did qualify their statements and talk about a matter of uncertainty. So as auditors, and I think they even might have mentioned material, and obviously as auditors we don't like the anything reference to material. So what we have done is we have commissioned, sorry, someone else is on. What we have done is commissioned our EYRE, who are RICS surveyor specialists, to look at a proportion of our assets to actually give us assurance around the valuation given by your internal valuers. In terms of going concern, yes, Bob's absolutely right. There is more emphasis on that this year. I know you have a decent level of reserves, but as a firm, we are taking a risk-based approach and actually looking at going concern. The going concern assertion in preparation of your accounts in a more detailed manner. We appreciate that you're statutorily obliged to carry out your services, but what we are doing is looking at reserves, we're looking at cash flow, we're looking at medium-term financial planning, and really looking at the impact of lost revenue and increased expenditure. So as well as pensions, and obviously Deloitte's prepare your pensions audit, and they give their opinion. So that's ongoing as well. So those are the three risk areas. So it's PPE valuations, it's going concern, and it's pension asset valuations. So actually, you know, to be fair to the finance team, it's quite timely that their work has been delayed, because the audit opinion will be delayed because of all the consultation processes that will be going through because of COVID.
Yeah, is it investment properties as well as PPE?
Yes, we'll be looking at both.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Angus, so you have your hand up. So although I said I would go in order, you've had your hand up for a while. Is it something relevant to this point?
Well, in a way it is. It wasn't when I raised my hand, and that was the mention of Deloitte, because we had awful problems last year. I just wondered whether we think that there will be procedural problems as we had last year, or whether we hopefully have got over that.
To echo your phrase, hopefully, I think we have. We have spent a great deal of time with the Berkshire treasurers and also ourselves talking with the pension fund. We have assurances from the Director of Resources at the Royal Borough of Windsor Maidenhead, who has said that they've spoken with Deloitte. Deloitte have assured them they should be completed on time. I have a note in my things to do list to just chat with Justin and Helen to ask them to see where they are in negotiations with Deloitte, because I do have a fear that Deloitte will say we've got to the end of November. It doesn't help us, because obviously EY will need to do their piece of work before our audit committee meeting. So that's what we've already fed back to the Royal Borough, who manage the pension fund for us, and they fed that into Deloitte. So hopefully Deloitte aren't just working to the end of November, but hopefully sometime around about the end of October, to allow our external auditors and the other external auditors around Berkshire to do their pieces of work and reassurance around the pension fund as well. So we are on top of it. Unfortunately, I suppose it's part of the controlled influence and accept diagram. We're controlling what we can. We're certainly influencing as much as possible, but we may end up having to accept where Deloitte's put us, unfortunately.
I think that's, sorry, Chair, but just to say where we are in working with Deloitte's last year, it was their first year of coming back to the public sector and carrying out public sector audits. This year we've been working with them since they signed off in December. We have had negotiations with them. Yes, it's not a done deal, and I absolutely echo what Bob is saying. We haven't got that assurance. that they won't be working right up to the wire. So I know Helen has had various meetings with various partners, but we have not had that assurance. So happy to discuss that with Bob and take that forward at a higher level with the Royal Borough Windsor and Maidenhead.
I hope your chivying will produce results. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Come on to Diane. Do you have any questions to ask? Hello, Diane.
Oh, sorry, I had my microphone on. No, I think I understand the situation and hope that it can be, we can get the information we need at the appropriate time.
Okay, thank you very much. Angus, did you have a further question that you wanted to put?
No, that was my only question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Daniel Sargent.
No questions from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Dubay, do you have any questions?
I think my questions have been answered. So we await November the 23rd to get a better idea of what's going on. I think that's about it, isn't it?
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much for that. We are asked to, the recommendation is that the Audit Committee is to consider and note the risks and monitoring actions of the Council's corporate risks as detailed in the attached CRR Appendix A. And I'm sure we've all done that. So thank you very much on that. We now move on to item 21 on the agenda, which is the risk management audit. And to present that is Catherine Hickman and Amanda Laws. I don't know who wishes to go first.
Item 20, Chairman.
Oh, sorry, I've missed item 20. Yes, sorry, corporate risk management. This is to be presented by Andrew Moulton, Sally Watkins, Keely Clements. So I don't know who wishes to start. Do you wish to start, Andrew?
If I could just give you a very brief overview of the report, Chairman, and then I'll hand over to Keely. So this is the usual report that you get every meeting. It is doesn't feel like very long since we last went through this in some detail, but we have got some updates this evening for you. If I just refer you to the bottom of page 16 in your agenda. So just a few points I just wanted to bring out there in paragraph 2.3. So firstly, around the presentation of the corporate risk register, we had a conversation at the committee last time about identifying and mapping and understanding the interdependencies between risks. We've started that work. It is quite complex, but we've had discussions, certainly at the corporate leadership team and elsewhere, about how we can present that in a meaningful way. So I propose that comes back in the next iteration of the risk register that you see at your November meeting. You'll have those interdependencies shown in the report. Just in terms of what's changed since the end of July. So there is just one new risk that has been added to the risk register, risk number 19, around housing numbers in the borough. So this is in response to the government's consultation paper on planning for the future. You'll have heard the leader of the council speak last week at the council about the importance of this issue to the council and to the wider community. There's quite a short consultation period. It ends on the 1st of October. So we believe that this is an important risk for the council to consider. And you'll see in the detail of the report, there's various mitigations that we're putting in place to try to manage that particular risk. In terms of risk number 10, which is the Brexit risk, there was a conversation last time about whether the risk profile was correct. We've looked at that again as officers, and we have slightly increased that risk in terms of its impact and likelihood. We're also proposing very shortly now to reintroduce the officer working group that we had through the back end of last year and very early this year, to make sure that we can respond to whatever the next few months bring in terms of the withdrawal agreement and what impacts that might have on council and the community. In terms of risk number 13, climate emergency, I think, yes, it was Councillor Sargent who made this point last time about have we got the assessment of the risk correct? And we have reassessed that now. It is in the very high bracket. There are some mitigations referred to in the detail of the report, but I'd also bring the committee's attention to the fact that Scrutiny have been looking at this, and their report will be going to the executive next month, along with the officer response to the recommendations there. So I think when that report is received and considered by the executive, you'll see some further mitigations in terms of the council's response to that climate emergency risk. Then risk number 18, the pandemic risk. Again, we talked about this at the end of July and questioned about whether or not it was the right assessment. We have looked at that. Obviously, these papers went to print over a week ago now. It's a very fast-moving situation. Obviously, yeah, the government's announcement yesterday will mean that we need to consider what our response is as a council to that, and all the response actions that we need to put into place with regard to that latest announcement. The only other thing I'd say is there's no new risks have been added to the register since last time. Just before I hand on to Keely, just to make the reference to the fact that on your next item on the agenda, Chairman, you've got the results of the internal audit of risk management. So hopefully when you hear Amanda Laws present that, you'll get that sense that I think we've made some positive progress in terms of the governance around risk management over the past 2 or 3 months, and in part that's through the help of the internal audit team. But I'll stop there in terms of my introduction, and at this point I'd hand over to Keely to talk about her new directorate and how that relates in particular to some of the specific risks on the corporate risk register.
Sure. Thank you, Andrew. Good evening, Chair and fellow councillors. Nice to meet you all, albeit virtually. Before I just talk a bit more broadly about some of the risks, I thought it might just be, if it's okay, just to take a minute just to talk about my directorate and what I have within it, because obviously this directorate was only formed in March. I joined the council at the end of May, so I appreciate that quite a few faces on here are new to me, and I appreciate that you may not have had a chance to fully understand how those changes have settled. So just to give you a quick rundown very quickly, I look after the Communities Insight and Change Directorate, and that directorate was created very much predicated around focusing on the customer and trying to bring more corporate governance to the group. So hopefully that's music to your ears. And the 5 areas that I look after and proud to is digital and change. So that's the change management folk plus the IT department. I also have the customer and localities function, which is our customer services group and all the localities people, the guys that go out and do the enforcement, etc. I have HR, so I have the internal population, which is great. I have the comms, engagement and marketing team that talk obviously both to our external customers and our internal people. And then finally, I have strategy and planning. So those 5 pieces together, it's about 270 staff. So absolutely managing that with good corporate governance and risk is a really important thing. And I guess really now turning to the risks that belong to me, the reason that I'm here today, and I have asked Sally Watkins, my Assistant Director of Digital and Change, to join, is absolutely naturally owning that part of the business. We have quite a number of IT risks, as you would running any IT function for a council, but there are obviously a couple that have come up on the corporate risk register. One is the infrastructure, and then obviously the telephony piece, and happy to talk to those if we have any questions in a second. But I guess just in terms of, I've come out of corporate sector, so I've come out of a FTSE 100 bank, heavily regulated, lots of governance and compliance. So I was very pleased to have Andrew approach me within the first week of joining, keen to help create the risk register for my directorate, because as you can imagine, whilst there were risks, these risks were elsewhere in the group. It hadn't been coalesced together before. And thank you, Andrew, for the work that you've done in helping pull that together. So I'm really pleased to say that that is in place now for my directorate, and we review it on our monthly team meeting, while September 1 is next week. So making sure that we're keeping good corporate governance around that. Now, I'll happily might defer to Sally in a second around the IT and telephony risks, just to give you a bit of flavour. But I guess if I just set the scene first, absolutely, with COVID bringing about the change in working pattern, that really was a watershed shift in behaviours for the council in terms of the number of people that then worked from home and now had to work from home, which put an awful lot of pressure on our IT kit and caboodle, including telephony. And therefore, you know, we've had to move very swiftly and fast to make sure that we could make that resilient, and it was strong enough to withhold that many people working from home. So that's also, I mean, those two pieces of kit, if you like, need to be on the corporate risk register, because if one or t'other goes down, that stops the council from functioning. Hence why you're seeing it at your level. But Sally, would you like to add something about the two risks in particular, where you can?
Of course, thanks, Keely. Good evening, councillors. Just to give a brief flavour of, I guess, where the council's infrastructure was pre-COVID, and then some of the mitigations that we've put in place. So the current council telephony infrastructure has been built and sized for a workforce that is primarily based within a council building. However, we already had plans in place to look at moving to more of a cloud-based telephony contact solution, but that was planned for 23-24. So because obviously COVID was unexpected, and we needed to work quickly, as Keely referenced, what we were able to do, because we had the right skills and the right team within IMT, was to be able to look at how we can change the way that the telephony is set up to ensure that we didn't have any kind of breaks in service, neither for our external customers nor our internal teams. So at the moment, we've got all of our critical services forwarded out through our infrastructure. That means that our contact centre staff can continue to work from home, and it means that those kind of really important services to our residents are still able to operate. We also did a number of activities as part of the COVID response, which I was part of the team, which allowed us to move services like adults and children's services into Netcall, which is our contact centre solution. That meant within a real kind of rapid fire period, we could go from having a workforce that was on average around 300 people at max would work from home, to moving to 1,100 from lockdown, which is, you know, no small feat from a technical perspective. Again, from an infrastructure perspective, rather than a telephony infrastructure, we sized our internet connection for people to be able to work from home from 300 meg to 700 meg, which is a huge undertaking for the technology team. And we've actually built some new infrastructure, which means that we can start to work in a more agile way from home. And I'm really pleased to say that all of those mitigating actions were put in place really swiftly, and we've been able to have an uptime from a council perspective for IT for 99.9%, which is in this day and age, actually, you know, we're quite proud of. So, but I'm happy to take any questions that members might have.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Very encouraging. Okay, so questions. We'll start the other way around. Can go to, first of all, to Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Debay. Do you have any questions?
Sure. Shall I start with IT questions? Hello. Last time I talked to your guys, they had a single point of failure of a single firewall, and I'm just wondering if that has been resolved.
Yeah, so we're from a firewall perspective, we're not raising it as a risk. We've got the right steps in place that ensures that if we have any incidents, we can still work successfully. I mean, one of the things we will be doing over the next year is looking at moving our firewall resiliency into Azure, but at the moment we don't have any corporate level concerns.
No, you've just got a single firewall there, so all your VPN links and everything into the office go through that one box, and of course it's a single point of failure. And that I see as a quite a significant risk, to be honest.
Yeah, we've just interestingly had a public a PSN audit, so like the central government audit, and the feedback so far has been really positive, and it hasn't come up as a risk from their perspective. But what we'll do, if that's okay with the chair, we'll do an update for the next meeting. But at the moment, it's not coming up as a significant risk for us at the moment.
Okay, I kind of I realise that most of your email and your other documents and things have gone to Office 365, which is cloud-based, of course. But I'm assuming you've got a number of services that are still run from the office. So
yeah, predominantly we are cloud-based now. So
which is cool.
Which is great. Yeah, which is great. But you're absolutely right. Some of our services either can't run from Azure or from a supplier hosted. But the lion's share are in that space now. So we're probably talking 75% are cloud hosted, and obviously we've got a cloud first strategy, which is part of our digital strategy moving forwards. But yeah.
And I'm assuming you had an on-prem telephone system.
That's right.
And you've moved away from that.
Yeah, so we've got NetCall, which is our contact center solution, and that's hosted by the supplier. But obviously part of our move, which I've referenced hopefully in the mitigations for the risk register, is that we're looking to move to Microsoft Teams for telephony.
Okay.
Which would work with our NetCall solution. So
everybody's already using Teams and they know how it works, so it makes some sense to me. Exactly. Yeah, so okay, that's cool. That's the IT stuff. Okay. In terms of my other questions, I sort of looked at the risk register, and I had some questions about data protection. I don't know if it's appropriate to ask that here. I did question in terms of I did look at the climate emergency stuff, and I was wondering why it has gone to very high. I couldn't quite understand it, because we got things like, we just talked about IT, for instance, which is only high, but if we don't quite hit our targets for climate emergency, Woking Borough Council doesn't stop running its services and everything like that. So I'm not quite sure why it's very high. And if someone could explain that to me, that would be great.
Chairman, shall I have a go at that one? I think I would say, because climate emergency or climate is one of the council's real priorities in the council plan, that it's got that prominence in the corporate risk register because of the importance to the council in terms of its own strategy.
Right, okay. But in terms of the council delivering its services, it wouldn't affect the council delivering services.
Yeah, you could argue that, certainly.
Yeah, so it doesn't make me question why it is. I understand it has to be important, but I don't understand why it's very high.
Yeah, I think... on that one, Chair? Could I comment on that, Chair?
Sorry,
Rachel.
That was muted. Yes, come in.
It was just a brief point on that. On that is that, if it's one of the main objectives of the council, and the risk register is there to look at risks that those objectives are not going to be met. So if it's a key priority and it's very, very difficult to meet, which it is, then it should be very high. And I totally agree that it should absolutely be very high.
But they are on track. They are doing the work. It's
I disagree with that, but there we are.
Okay, but it says that it's on track and it's being worked on. I just don't, in terms of if we miss it slightly, it doesn't affect how the council operates. But
okay,
we can debate on that one at another time if you prefer.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Imogen. Can we now go to Daniel? Do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you. I was looking through the risk register. I wanted to ask about the workforce risk that's on there, particularly with regards to COVID. So obviously it's talking about the well-being of our staff, and obviously the COVID-19 has changed the situation on that quite significantly. People are working from home all the time. There's they're going through a lot of change in their lives. There's a lot of pressure across many departments. And I just wondered what kind of measures we're taking to mitigate against that kind of new, kind of emergent part of that risk.
Sure. May I respond, Chair?
Yes, if you would. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question, Daniel. I think that's a really important point, and mental wellbeing is really close to my heart as a theme anyway. There's a number of things we're doing from an HR perspective. So you're absolutely right, where people are working from home, we now have virtual teams, obviously. So the people and organisational development side of HR, who do all the training, etc., have been doing lots and lots of podcasts about how to run a virtual team, how to look after yourself from a wellbeing perspective. Every Friday we write out to all of our staff with a sort of newsletter, but we try to make it interactive and interesting, and we're constantly giving tips on and signposting on how people can look after themselves and link with their team. The other thing that Susan's introduced, and I did my first one today, is the big chat. So every week, all 1,255 staff are invited to talk to Susan. So she hosts the majority, and then individual directors hold ones as they go through the year. And it's a chance for everybody. It's totally free format, so people can bring up anything they like. We do a little bit of a business update, what's going on at CLT, or kind of what the big issues are, what's going on in my directorate, and then we just let people free format and talk about what's important to them. And we get a chance to have a little bit of some of that sort of, I guess, water cooler discussions that you miss when you're normally in a office environment. So, and I still think there's more we can do. So don't get me wrong, I think those things are great. But clearly, now that we're looking at another level 4 and potentially a longer period of working from home, I think it's something we need to really keep front and centre. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. Angus, Councillor Angus Ross.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Keely, to the Madhouse. You outlined your responsibilities, and do I understand when you said strategy and planning, that didn't mean land use planning?
No, that, and I said this with a bit of a smile, my strategy and planning team is more of a T than a team. It's 1.6 people. And Laura Callan, who you may have met, does a sterling job of doing all the KPI reporting, and she helped create the council plan, so the 6 strategic themes that you know and love, the 2020 to 2024 plan. Laura was very central in that, and that's certainly an area of my function that I would like to, medium-term plan willing, beef up a little bit to help support the council on a broader basis.
Thanks for that. Separately to that, we have got one new risk on the register, the housing numbers in the borough, and in the report, in the agenda, it does say that a verbal update will be provided at the Audit Committee meeting. Was there anything more that was planned to be said about that than what Andrew did give us at the beginning? Because I think it's an emerging issue, and of course we don't know whether the government will change its thinking as a result of the consultation, but I think there's a number of aspects there of concern.
I think if I could just respond to that, Angus, I think I couldn't really add anything further than what Councillor Housel spoke of at the council meeting last week in terms of his statement on this. Obviously, it's not very far away now from the 1st of October, but I know that there are lots of actions taking place in terms of encouraging the public to respond to the consultation. The council itself is responding to the consultation, but nothing further to add than what I said earlier.
Okay, yes, I see that the IMD has now been issued. Perhaps doesn't go into as many areas as many of us might have thought, or even that John covered, but that's our response. And I'm sure many councils around the country will be similarly responding. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angus. Diane King, Councillor Diane King, do you have any questions?
I think everything that I wanted to know has been covered. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Maria G.
Yes, I've got a few questions on a few different areas. I'd like to just follow up on what Angus said. I'm surprised that the new government proposals are not listed for the housing land supply as an additional risk. So it's so it's got an increased number of speculative planning applications. It doesn't seem to be updated for the change in government, potential change in government policy.
I can certainly take that away, Chairman, and we'll look at that. I think, I mean, it may be my poor wording of the risk, but it was intended to cover everything that's in that government consultation paper.
Okay, that just wasn't clear to me from that. Okay, thank you, Andrew. Just moving on to item risk 5, delivering the SEND reforms. I'm just wondering, so in one of the other areas, I think it's safeguarding adults, it's got impact on staff morale. I'm just wondering how the departments, and you'll have to forgive me for not knowing exactly what the departments are called, that deal with SEND reforms. What's the sort of makeup of the departments in terms of temporary and permanent staff? And are we up to capacity? How does that link with staff morale and to delivery to the users of special educational needs, that is the families and carers and their children? So it's a question about staffing, I think, and the composition of staffing and the interactions with, parents and morale.
Okay, if I could answer that in 2 ways. So firstly, I don't have all that information to hand, Maria, but I will take an action to produce a note. I'll talk to Carol Camus's team around that. But could I also suggest through you, Chair, that maybe when you're thinking about which directors you'd like to see at this committee in the future, that you invite Carol Camus?
Well, yes, I think that's a good idea. Thank you.
Questions to around children's services.
Okay, the reason I'm asking is that over the past 6 months or so, I've seen cases that indicate to me that it's possibly not up to full staffing capacity, and there seems to be temporary staff, albeit that they're doing a very good job, and that concerns me, I think, in terms of staff morale and sort of job jeopardy, particularly in the current situation, and organisational knowledge. If you don't have sufficient permanent staff, then organisational knowledge can get lost. And I'm a bit worried about all of that being sort of missed out from that. If I can move on to safeguarding adults, I think one of the things that concerns me, which has become apparent during the lockdown, is that some of our more elderly residents, and I've had a few, most of them have managed to email, but they don't necessarily have access to things like Teams or those ways of interacting with the council and with their councillors. And I just think that's a bit of I can see that we've said AS Adult and Social Care has reviewed and updated this risk due to the fundamental impacts of COVID-19. And I'm just wondering whether it's been considered that as one gets older, you don't always keep up with technology, and if that's been considered in the review of adult social care.
I think if I could start, maybe Sally would like to comment on this as well from a sort of technology perspective. But I know that this is an issue that certainly from an officer perspective, we have been looking at for many years now in terms of making sure that we are inclusive and that we have alternative means of people interacting with us. I know, for example, Scrutiny have spent and are spending a lot of time at the moment examining the council's response, particularly around adults and the more elderly population. So that may be an area for Scrutiny to follow up on, but I don't know whether there's anything that Sally might want to add to that.
Thanks, Andrew. I think it's probably important to say that during COVID and obviously up to now, the telephony services, both for the council and specifically for ASC, have been maintained. So whilst I absolutely understand there is often a digital disconnect, part of our process through COVID is making sure that those kind of key critical services were available through the traditional means of telephone. And in addition to that, through the COVID response that the council undertook, 4,500 adults across the borough were contacted, and that includes all of those adults that were receiving social care services, and then any notified through central government, so over and above those people who are currently in receipt of social care services.
Thank you. And I guess I've got very quick.
Can I come back to you, Maria? And I'll come back to you shortly. Let's give everybody a chance to have a word. So I'll ask Rachel. Do you have any questions, Rachel?
Yeah, I had a few points. Thank you, Chair. And thank you for your introduction, Keely and Sally, and also Andrew. And thanks for updating the report in light of our comments last time. That's appreciated. First point is on the children's services risk on page 27. It notes that there's an increase in domestic abuse and an increase in mental health and emotional well-being as a result of COVID. And that's good that that's being recognised as a risk. But what I can't immediately see is how those risks are being managed and mitigated. You know, what's been changed to deal with those particular COVID-related risks?
Again, I'm probably not the best person to answer this with any detail. I'm happy to get an answer to you and to the committee on that particular point, Rachel, but I just reiterate what I said to Maria as well, that actually having Carol along I think would be useful for the committee.
Yeah, okay. And I just had a few more points and then one further question. Looking at the information risk on number 8, I was pleased initially to see that an internal audit was referenced there, because I think that's something I've raised earlier. But then if we look at the internal audit schedule a bit later on, it shows that actually that's been deferred to 21-22. So I'm not sure actually, I sort of question whether that's actually an effective risk mitigation measure at the moment, because it's so far out.
Sorry, could I just respond to that? Yeah, there has actually quite recently been an internal audit completed of data protection. It's just in the sort of final reporting stages. I think actually that would be the audit from the previous year, from 2019-20. So the deferral of this year's audit, I think that's the rationale for deferring it, because actually we've recently completed work in that area.
Yeah,
and just to conclude, albeit it's not quite been finalised, but I understand that the conclusion will be a level 2 in terms of assurance. So that's the sort of second best level of assurance.
Okay, thank you. That's useful. Just coming back to the climate emergency risk number 13. So it does now state that more work needs to be done, and as we've said, that the risk level has been raised. So I think it's good that that's been acknowledged, but I would emphasise that I think that could be brought out further. That the task and finish group that Andrew referred to earlier, that has reported already into OFU scrutiny management, did confirm the level of errors in the action plan, and commented on the unrealistic nature of some of the targets. So I think that could be further emphasised, especially after the exec meeting. The housing risk, number 19, that's already been referenced. I just would take issue with the further actions to mitigate the risk here. So one of them is the leaflet drop to all residents. And I mean, I think that's more of a political decision by the ruling group rather than actually a risk mitigation exercise. I don't believe that will have any impact on any government decisions relating to the number of houses. The government know that generally people think the number of houses is too high. So in my opinion, I don't think that is actually in any way going to mitigate that risk, and it should be removed. But my question really was on the equality duty risk. So that's page 37. So it states in there that there are no specific COVID-19 related impacts. Now, we know that COVID does not treat everyone equally, and that some are more affected than others. So I don't think we can actually say there are no COVID related impacts on that risk. And I think there should be at least some sort of assessment of that to inform decision making at the council. So, for example, are there any public protection messages which, are those messages getting through to the people that are most at risk? Are they in the formats that people can easily access? Does decision making take into account disproportionately affected groups? I'm talking older people, I'm talking ethnic minorities, pregnant women, whatever. So I think that could be enhanced to fully take account of the fact that there are equality impacts relating to COVID-19. I'd be interested in your thoughts on that, Andrew.
Well, yeah, if I could start on that, I'm sure Keely might want to comment as well. I think, again, overview and scrutiny have been looking at the council's response to COVID, and there's certainly been a number of references in a number of those sessions and reports from officers around the disproportionate impact on particular parts of our community. I think it's unfortunate, perhaps phrasing in terms of the presentation of the corporate risk register suggests that there wasn't. But certainly that is being picked up through overview and scrutiny. But I think it's a good comment, and it's certainly something as we look at refreshing and updating the equalities policy that I think we need to reflect on and bring into play in terms of the consideration of that document.
Okay,
but
thank you.
I'll hand it to Keely.
It will be short. I agree with Councillor Burgess's comments, actually. I think we just need to be a bit crisper in our wording. So I think, yes, there's certainly something there that we can take away and work on. So thank you for flagging.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask Justin Thorpe, you've had your hand up for some time, so over to you.
Sorry, Chair, I was on mute. I'm not sure how, oh no, I am. Sorry, this is only my second meeting of the Working Audit Committee, so I've only just taken over as Audit Manager. So I don't know if I'm allowed to speak and make a comment during a meeting, but it's really interesting.
Feel free to carry on.
Okay, thank you. And I hope officers will take it in a. Basically, what I'm saying is, I do not think, and it's SIPF's view, that the corporate risk register should not be scrutinised as an audit committee. The audit committee's function in terms of the corporate risk register and its whole risk management structure is to have the assurance that it's working well. And I think we'll come on to that in terms of the next item from internal audit. But I just wanted to make that point. I think all the points that have been made, deep diving into the risk register, are valid, but perhaps not for this committee. So if we could talk about that afterwards, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think, Imogen, did you have your hand?
I do, yes, because I didn't get to ask all my questions the first time round.
Okay.
Thank you. I have a question on the GDPR points and the data protection points. Do we do we have any information on the organisations that handle data for us? I mean, obviously Optalis handle data for us and companies like that, and I'm just curious as to how are we managing the data that they have and what protection it has. I'm also concerned about the training for people about data protection. Does it include non-electronic data breaches and an update on what's happening? And is it happening a lot? You know, was it something they did a couple of years ago and that's it, or is it iterative? That's the one thing. The other question I have is about equalities, which is probably more of a question for Keely, is how is the equalities being logged, reported, and where is that information going? And should it be coming here to audit as part of governance? I don't know.
Hi there, Imogen. When you say equalities, sorry, did you mean data? Could you just elaborate on the question?
I'm concerned about obviously we have the protected characteristics of the Equalities Act. It's very easy to get data for that from the staff, you know, about the staff who work for Woking Borough Council. I'm more concerned, are we doing enough for people who are our service users, for the people who use our services, and are we doing enough to support different categories? I saw a load of stuff in the report there about BAME stuff or BME, and I didn't see anything about LGBT or what we were doing about that. The other categories, yeah.
Sure. So, and I'm ever so sorry because obviously I have been here 4 months, but can I take that action away to just go and check through what we're doing? That would be very kind, because I don't want to mislead you with my lack of knowledge, if that's okay.
I'd like to see it come here as part of our governance remit. That's probably, so, you know, we can say what kind of reports we should have.
Sure. I think qualities is on the risk register. Andrew, is that right?
It is, yes. So, yeah, it is part of the corporate risk register. And if I could pick up Imogen's other point about data protection. So, in terms of other organisations, we'd have an information sharing agreement with them, which would be the sort of key way that we'd monitor how other informations that are working with our data on behalf of the council, how they're using it, and we monitor those closely.
How do we tackle data breaches?
Sorry?
How would we tackle data breaches?
Well, data breaches, we would get reports from those organisations should a breach occur. They're under the same duty as we are in terms of reporting breaches to the Information Commissioner, or certainly keeping an internal record of non-reportable breaches.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Coming back to you, Maria. Hello, Maria.
Yes, that's all right. Just turning myself on. Other people have asked the questions I was going to ask about equalities. I just want to clarify what I was talking to about Andrew before about the new paper. I know that the new housing consultation paper, I know that we mentioned it as a separate item. I think my specific point was about 5-year housing land supply. So item 4. That's the only thing that I was thinking about in relation to that. So I think it's a problem with item 4 and item 19 being separated, is that item 19 talks about housing numbers in particular, but I was thinking about the effect of the new paper on demonstrating the housing land supply, which obviously is a really big risk if it goes through. There's financial, but there's also speculative development is even worse, and it's sort of linking item 4 and item 19, if you see what I mean, Andrew.
I do, and that was the point I was making in my introduction about in terms of our processes, we need to, an improvement, we need to better make those linkages between those 19 risks and where the interdependencies are. So that's certainly something we're working on.
Yeah, I was really pleased to see that, because I think I talked about multiplicative effects in the last meeting. So like COVID combined with Brexit, combined with anything else. So I was really pleased to see that in 2.3. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page, and that's it. Thank you.
And Chair, if I could just sort of respond to Justine's comments a minute ago as well. I mean, I think that's entirely right. We did talk at the last committee meeting around the sort of the remit of the audit committee with regard to risk management, and I think that it is about seeking assurance from officers and internal audit and indeed external audit that the way that the council identifies and subsequently assesses and manages its risk, we've got very strong sort of processes in place. So I know it is easy to sort of get sucked into the detail of individual risk, but I think it's important that we do bear in mind the comments that Justine's made.
Yes, bear in mind, but also have a compensating control. I mean, what you said is hugely effective, but perhaps not for this meeting. It can be, it's for you, it's for the council to decide. And Andrew and I, and Keely, who is clearly hugely concerned about governance, we can talk about that, and that'd be really useful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's no further questions or points on that matter. We move on. If you would all just note the comments on there and consider the risks mitigating actions that the Council Corporate Risks are detailed. Thank you. We come on now to item, let me get this right, item 21, Risk Management Audit. I don't know quite who wishes to lead this one, whether it's Catherine Hickman or Amanda Laws.
It's Amanda Laws, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Would you like to start?
Yes, hello everybody.
Hello.
My name's Amanda. I carried out the risk management audit at Wokingham over the spring and the summer this year. Just a bit of brief information. I can confirm that the audit opinion, the assurance, was given as the second highest opinion, which is classified as substantially complete and generally effective. I spoke to directors and assistant directors throughout the course of the audit. There was a lot of engagement in the audit and in risk management generally, a great deal. There are three concerns in the management action plan, and action has already been taken on some of those, I think most of them. I think the audit helped to create more of an impetus, and I know that the Corporate Risk Register and the Directorate Risk Registers were all updated during the process of the audit. And one of the outcomes that I think could be very significant going forward is the risk management group that will be created, that I think is in the management action plan.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, do we have any questions? So I'll start with Councillor Rachel Burgess.
I just had a quick one actually for Amanda as to what her thoughts were about the risk register coming to the audit committee in the light of that audit. I mean, personally, you know, I think us being able to review the register and ask questions, that is how we gain assurance that risk management is being done effectively. So personally, I think it's a good idea that it comes to the committee, but I'd just be interested if Amanda, having led on this audit, had a view on that.
Yes, I mean, obviously, having an overview of the Corporate Risk Register, I think there was a really good process that we went through, looking at all the individual risks with officers. It was really very effective, and hopefully the outcome has been, you know, an improved risk register to be reviewed.
Sorry, Rachel, you were muted there. I didn't know whether you had anything further to say.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I go to Maria G, please? Councillor Maria G.
Yes, I was a bit baffled by item 3 on page 44. I read it, but I'm none the wiser after having read it. So I wonder if somebody could explain to me how this might translate into practice at a whole council level and then feed down, or how it might translate at a departmental level and then feed up. So I'm really baffled by the whole thing, I think.
Is that about the risk appetite?
Yes.
Yes, it is, yeah. Risk appetite is something that the conversation does get into sometimes with risk management audits. With this particular audit, because the Corporate Risk Register and the Departmental Risk Registers were being refreshed at the time, we never really got into the conversation of risk appetite, but risk appetite can be a difficult thing to pin down sometimes, and different councils have different ideas on it. Some councils have an overall risk appetite, some councils have individual departmental risk appetites or service risk appetites. I put it in there really to promote some discussion, actually. But the response is that, you know, training will be undertaken, and that links into number 2 above for the training. So I thought that was acceptable.
I think I'm still confused about what actions are going to. I can see it says the following data should be taken into account. But I'm still confused about what actions are to be expected. You'll have to forgive my lack of knowledge of risk appetite and what can be produced about it. What sort of actions would you?
So it's the balance of it's the balance between the risk that you want to take. Some services have a very, very low risk tolerance. Others have a higher risk tolerance. So it's really just for the council and maybe individual services within the council to decide where their risk appetite sits and how it links in with their service plans and stuff like that.
Okay, so we'd expect to see perhaps here or elsewhere some sort of document that outlines the risk appetite that different services or directorates have, and therefore possibly not the whole council, it may not be additive, but looking at each department, and then we could judge decisions that department is making against their risk appetite to make sure things aren't going awry.
Yeah, I mean, one of the risk management group, the board that will be created, this can certainly be a part of their terms of reference as well, because I believe there'll be representatives from all departments and you know, many services on that. So it really is down to the council to decide how they want to go ahead with appetite. That's why I put it in there, really. Like I say, to promote the discussion on it. Really.
And Maria, you're totally right. Maria, you're totally right. And Amanda's totally right. Amanda's totally right about, it's Justine. Sorry, it's Justine from External Audit. And I've been told off for talking as another council without asking permission. But Amanda is totally right. Maria is totally right. It is about the risk appetite, but it's not a risk appetite of one individual. You are a board, so you're a cabinet. They are service departments. You are a council, so it needs to come from the top, but it also needs to come from the bottom. Risk management is not only managing risk, it's also managing opportunities. So the appetite for risk is also the appetite for opportunities, which is where your commercialisation program comes into play, which is really positive. But obviously you need to manage the risk in terms of you've got all the professional advice, etc., etc. As an audit committee, you need the assurance because you can't do it all. I mean, you've come up with some fantastic questions, but you can't do it all. So your role as an audit committee is to have the assurance framework that is totally mapped. And it's all part of the risk. And I'm sorry, I'm just going off on one now because it's one of my loves. I'm an artist as well, so have a look at my art that I create when I'm not auditing. So yeah, no, totally. I mean, you're absolutely right. But this, we can talk about it. I think we need to take it offline and have a really good in-depth conversation. And training, you know, for free. I'm not offering, you know, I'm not, but Amanda and I can do this together. So thank you for some really invaluable questions.
Thank you.
Okay. Diane, do you have a question?
Not a question, but I noticed on the agenda that there is some training going to be offered for this particular issue, and so I suggest that we arrange to do that so that everybody on both sides, officers and members, get a chance to talk.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, I think that's something we should certainly be looking at. Okay, where are we? So Angus Ross, Councillor Angus Ross, do you have a point or question you wish to make?
Yes, thanks. At the summary of the report, it mentions that the audit included researching good practice from other local authorities, and this learning has already been incorporated. Was there much good that was learnt from that, and in the end, how did we rank, as it were, against the other councils that you investigated?
I thought we ranked very well, actually. I really do. There were quite a few questions that we sent out through the London Audit Group, etc., and South East Chief Internal Auditors Group, the review of the corporate risk register, the process that we go through here, was very much more than the sum of the replies that we had. We certainly came out very well compared to the others. Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
May I add to that? Sorry, Chair. May I add to that? I mean, obviously, risks are moving, and you can only be benchmarked against your peers and the best of your peers. And there is another term as well as risk appetite. It's called risk maturity, and it's a question of whether you're a risk mature organisation, a risk naive organisation, etc., etc. Let's talk about it offline, because I think Amanda knows a lot more than, yeah. I mean, we need to talk. So we can do this, and we can help. That's what internal and external audit are for. We are your critical friends.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Daniel Sargent, do you have a question?
No questions from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Dumay.
Hi there. I've really only got one thing left. Is that what I'm concerned about with this report is at the beginning we've got the bit that talks about the public sector equality duty. Please confirm that due regard to public sector equality duty has been taken, and if an equality assessment has been completed, or explain why an equalities assessment is not required. All that somebody's written is NA. My concern is certainly with assessing risk and managing risk. Part of that should be including our regard to equalities on whatever level it might be. And I don't understand quite why it's been dismissed in this report. Does that make sense?
I think I'd have to pass this over to Andrew, probably.
Yeah, let me just respond to that, Imogen. So with this was really just to provide the results of the audit to the Audit Committee. So it isn't trying to suggest that equalities isn't an important issue, as we talked about.
If it was mentioned in the report, I'd get it, but it's not.
Yeah, it is a template that is used for all reports. So public sector equality
NA is not acceptable.
Well, public sector equality duty is something that we need to consider for all reports. Perhaps what it might have better said is that it's not directly relevant to this report, because it's just showing the results of the audit of risk management, as opposed to introducing a new policy or strategy or different service.
And in that auditing risk management, surely you would consider how does this affect people of different categories?
I'm not sure I quite get your point there, Imogen. I'm happy to have a conversation with you offline on that to make sure I'm not missing anything.
If you're looking at risk management and you're looking at the risks, then you're going to look at your risks and how you're managing them, and are any of the mitigation moves that you're making affecting people of different equality categories? Certainly, if you were auditing it, I would have thought that you would have looked at it and said, are people doing that when they're doing this work? Am I making sense? Yes.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. We'll certainly take that point on board, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, thank you.
If I might just give a quick example. So if you were thinking of outsourcing things to another company, say you were at the start of the outsourcing to Octalis, then you would be thinking about the risks associated with that, because it affects a particular sector. So I think I'm with Imogen on that. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
Bill, you're on mute.
You're muted, Bill.
Yeah, right, I'll start again. If there's no further questions or points, we will take the recommendation that the committee note the findings of the recent internal audit review. Everybody happy with that? Thank you very much. Okay, we move on now to item 22, which is the 2021 annual
You're muted again.
Sorry, that's over to you, Andrew. Did you? I've got to start again. That's item 22, which is the 2021 annual audit and investigation plan in the year review, and I would ask Andrew to present that one. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Hi, Chair.
I could hand over to Catherine Hickman. Catherine is going to present this report, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. The item 22 relates to the report on pages 45 to 56, and it refers to the 2021 Audit and Investigation Plan that was approved by Audit Committee in February. That was immediately prior to the COVID pandemic. So for the first 2 quarters of the year, some of the audits that we had planned to undertake have not been able to start as services responded to the impact of COVID. So work in the early part of the year focused more on investigations activity, for example, the COVID payments that we worked with the finance team to give them assurances that monies paid in a short time to help businesses were actually paid correctly. We now need to refocus the work for the remainder of the year, and through discussions with other heads of internal audit in other local authorities and taking advice from professional bodies, we've considered what work needs to be undertaken for the head of internal audit to give an annual audit opinion on the council's internal control, governance and risk management framework. As a result, the in-year review has proposed changes, and on pages 49 to 56 of the report, you can see the original plan and the revised plan. I'll also mention that we'll shortly be starting the 2021-22 planning process too, and we're asking members to approve the updated plan.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Catherine. Are there any questions, first of all, from Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Debay?
Believe it or not, there are no questions from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Daniel Sargent?
No questions from me. Thanks for the report.
Thank you very much. Councillor Angus Ross?
Nothing, thank you.
Councillor Diane King?
No, nothing from me either. Thank you, Chairman.
Very good. Councillor Maria G?
Great. So I got loads of time. That's really good. So I think I just have a few concerns. I had asked for the fixed asset register to be included this year. I think I'm probably okay with that one, although I'm a bit disappointed it's not going to be looked at. On page 53, I note that Brexit, the audit is no longer required. And I find that a bit, I don't know if Rachel mentioned this before, she may have. We just moved Brexit up in terms of risk, and I'm just wondering why we've got no longer required if we've still got it on the corporate risk register. And I've got a couple of others to ask about as well.
Okay, well, in terms of the Brexit audit, we reprioritised, so we won't be attending the meetings of the Brexit working group, but we do remain available should the group have any specific matters that they want to consult audit on. We will stay abreast of developments through the corporate leadership team.
Okay, and then the adult social care provider market, I would have thought that would be very risky, both in the pandemic and to do with sourcing of carers. So I'm surprised that has gone down from 20 to 0. I mean, the subtotal there is 200 to 5, and I'm just concerned that key corporate risks, which are likely to rise during the current situation, are actually being looked at less. And I've just picked out 2 of them there, but I mean, any one of them, I would say, is likely to be more risky. So I don't understand why we're putting them down. But if you can answer on adult social care provider market, because that does seem to be key as well.
Yeah, I mean, the plan's coming to this evening. This is the whole purpose for if you think we need to rebalance anything, but we would say that we're working within limited resources. So for putting something else into the plan, we need to take something out. I'll also comment as well, if I may, on the key corporate risks. you'll notice in the first part of the plan, we've actually increased the number of days on the financial systems area. And this is a key corporate risk number 1 in the risk register that you've seen this evening. And we felt in the current climate, with the pressures against local authorities, that was quite a key area that we needed to focus on for the coming 2 quarters. So that's the reasoning behind that.
Yeah, I just don't understand why key financial systems are likely to fail because of the pandemic, whereas operational risks are thought to be areas which you don't focus on. I would have thought when you've got a pandemic, your key financial systems are likely to be unchanged. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but feel free to talk. Just tell me why I'm wrong. But then things like key corporate risks and operational risks are somehow less worthy of attention. I would have thought they'd be even more worthy of attention. So I don't understand the decision-making process, I guess, behind the refocusing of this plan.
Can I just ask Bob? I noticed Bob's got your hand up. Did you want to make a point on this?
Yes. If you look at the 2 grade items on the financial systems, part of it is making sure that we have been processing our payments and grants to, sorry, apologies, I haven't got the camera on, to suppliers. The government has set certain guidelines down around us under procurement policy notices on how we should be treating our suppliers and making payments as fast as we can. So that's part of the thing they're reviewing to make sure we've done that and there's not been any loss of governance or control around our payments. And also the government is expecting us to provide audit facilities on the grant payments that we paid out to people like small businesses and so on like that. So that is probably why the days have been increased around those parts of the key financial systems. So they are a COVID impact and they are a requirement that we have to do for the government to assure them that we're spending their money properly as well as our own.
Yeah, I guess overall for this one, I'm a bit more worried about the whole report because the recommendation is that we should approve it. And because I can't see the overall strategy for the change in where we're focusing, I don't think I've got sufficient information at the moment to approve this. But I'd be interested to know what Rachel thinks. I mean, she's closer to the front line than me.
Okay, so we come to Rachel next anyway. So Rachel, do you have any points you wish to make or any questions?
Yes, I do. I mean, I would agree that it is quite alarming when you look at page 53 that so many of the risks that the key risks we've just been discussing are not being reviewed this year. But I do also understand the reasons that Catherine's given, and that if we take, if we put something in, we've got to take something out. There's only a finite resource. I suppose my question linked to that would be, what's the effect of these reductions in the number of days? So is there any effect on the reliance that the external auditors will place on this work? And is the reduction in hours, will that actually affect the internal auditor's ability to give their annual opinion at the end of the year?
Oh, sorry, anybody wish to come back on those comments?
Sorry, I was just on mute there. I don't know if Justine wants to comment about the reliance that can be placed on the work that we're undertaking.
Justine, do you have any comments to make? Can't get her at the moment. Hello, Justine? Nope. I'll come back to you, Catherine.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair.
Yeah.
Could I just comment on that? It is certainly a reliance on the internal audit work around our key financial systems that the external auditors do rely on when they produce their opinion and their audit of the accounts. So obviously, yes, it's obviously concerning page 53 that is dropping the number of hours on some of the key risks, but the financial systems ones actually have been increased to provide that extra assurance.
Thank you.
And just on the internal audit opinion and the effect on that?
Well, in liaison with the head of internal audit, we felt that the work that we'd be undertaking he would be able to give that head of internal audit opinion. He felt it was correctly balanced.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I was on mute. We do take into consideration the head of internal audit opinion, but we do have a substantive audit that we follow through.
Thank you very much. Andrew, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate the point that Catherine made earlier about it's only the meeting after next where you'll be considering the 2021-22 internal audit plan. And I totally take the concerns that have been expressed, particularly by Councillor G and Councillor Burgess. We'll certainly make sure that in terms of those key corporate risks, that the next audit plan focuses much more heavily on those. But I think, obviously we know that we're in difficult times and we need to focus, as Bob Watson has said, around the financial systems work. And to answer the question about do we have enough in the audit plan in terms of what we've already done and what we propose to do over these next 6 months, I'm still confident that we can provide the level of assurance to the Audit Committee that you will be seeking.
Thank you very much. Are there any other points anybody wishes to raise? If not, we will go to the recommendation, and the recommendation is that this committee is asked to approve the updated 2021 audit and investigation plan. So can we do for those happy to approve this, could you please raise your hands now? We have 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we have 5. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, is that right? I don't know whether Madeline is there. Can you?
Yes, that's correct. You've got 5.
5. Okay, and against? Could you all put your hands down? Could you please lower your hands? Yeah, and against? And an abstention. 1 abstention. Okay.
Wait a minute. Sticky hands.
What was that? Were you abstaining, Maria?
No, I was voting against.
You won against. Okay, so
I don't know what you was missing. I think
we have 5 for and 1 against.
I was voting. I was abstaining.
Oh, you were abstaining. Sorry.
Yeah, that's what I was voting.
Right. Okay, I'll come back to you, Madeline. What was it? What was it? 4 and 4, 1 abstain and 1 against.
Yes, 5 for, 1 against, and 1 abstention.
Okay, thank you very much. So that is carried, and we move on now to item 23, which is effectiveness of Audit Committee, and I think that comes back to you, Andrew.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll just be brief. I did reference this briefly at the last meeting, and I'll give an apology first to the committee. I was hoping to be a bit more advanced with this than I am tonight. What you've got in your pack tonight is the SITFA guidance with regard to audit committees. It's quite a lengthy tome. There's a lot of information in there. What my proposal is that I will create a brief survey based on, it's in one of the appendices, but how you would evaluate the effectiveness of an audit committee. That would be specifically for audit committee members, possibly, if you were minded as well, Chairman, for other members who might have an interest or want to express a view. I think also for directors, I think it would be useful for directors to express a view on this, and possibly external audits too. So to get a rounded picture of people's perceptions and views, I think would be useful. I think that the purpose and the benefits of this would be that it would help us to identify any particular training needs that people have got either individually or collectively as a committee. We've already referred to risk management this evening. I think that's that feels like quite a priority for us. But there may be other training needs that are identified from that survey. And indeed, it might be, because I'd propose to circulate the terms of reference for the committee, just to remind ourselves of what the remit is for this committee. It might be that there are certain aspects that perhaps aren't in the terms of reference that you think ought to be when you look at the SIT for guidance. So it just gives us that opportunity to reflect on where the committee is and how we can seek to continuously improve it. So my proposal would be to do that survey over the next month with a view to bringing back a comprehensive report of the results and some recommendations to the meeting in November. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Are you suggesting that the SITFA survey proposals, or the proposals through SITFA, are actually sent out to every member of the council?
That would be my suggestion, Chairman, but I'd be keen to hear what other members thought.
Well, I think the views, in my view, the views of all members of the council should be sought. So I don't know how everybody else feels, if anybody else has any views on that. I'll come to Maria first.
Yeah, before I could answer the question that Andrew's asked, I think I would have to know what the survey was going to include, so that we can be sure that everybody who gets it has the information or the knowledge they need to answer it. So it's possible that we may need two surveys, one for members or possibly former members of the Audit Committee, and one for councillors who are not on the Audit Committee. I mean, if somebody asked me about planning law, I would probably not have very much knowledge of that. So I would find a survey that was aimed at the planning committee quite difficult to answer as a non-specialist. You see what I mean?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Rachel.
Yeah, I would certainly support a survey of all members. I don't know if we need a separate one or not, but I guess if people aren't that familiar, they could just not answer all the sections. But I'd certainly support that. I think there are some areas that we could certainly improve on in the committee. Things like value for money, we don't seem to touch on that so much. I know it comes up in the external audit reports, but it's not an area I feel we've looked at and really sort of got under the skin on. Of things like fraud, again, I don't think we really get under the skin of that. I know there's a policy, but that's, I don't know, a great deal more than that. And I think the other thing that struck me in terms of improvements would be the independence point that it talks about quite a lot. So I think we could consider things like whether we should have an independent member of this committee. I think that would be a really healthy thing for the committee to have. I also think personally that the chair of the committee should be an opposition member. You know, nothing against our current chair, but I do think that, you know, you could get into a situation where you're sort of marking your own homework in a way, and I think it would be better from an independence point of view to have an opposition member being the chair. And also in terms of the external auditors, I mean, Justine was asking earlier whether she was allowed to speak at the meeting. We could have something like, you know, the first 10 minutes where it's actually just members and the external auditors talking together without actually officers there. So I think there are certainly some ideas, and those could all be brought out in a survey and training as well. And certainly would agree with the point on training. Some members of the committee don't ask that many questions and rarely speak. I don't know why that is, but if it's a training thing, that's something we should certainly be addressing. So yeah, overall, I definitely would support a survey. I think that would be a good way to go.
Thank you very much. Angus Ross. Hello, Angus.
Yeah, right. No, I'm there now. Yes, I was just looking at the report that 87 pages of it. They must be paid by the word to produce all that, and how we really get to grips with that against what we do, I think will be quite a time-consuming occupation. I think it will be useful to really not only just see what our terms of reference are and remind us, but really what points from that we really should look at, because dealing with 87 pages is not something I look forward to.
Well, thank you very much for that. That would I'd come back to Andrew on that then, and whether or not it should be pared down to be more suited to our own committee.
Yeah, I'd certainly agree with Angus. I wasn't intending to create an 87-page survey, you'll be glad to hear. I was thinking more along the lines of, as I say, it's one of the appendices there that it's a couple of pages around review of effectiveness, so using some or all of those questions there to tailor a survey that would be relevant for Wokingham.
Okay, thank you very much. Daniel Sargent.
Thank you. Yeah, on your original question where you asked whether the survey should go out to all members or just those of the committee, I think it's actually quite important it goes to all members, because us as an audit committee, we're providing a function that fits into the wider council, and that, you know, the wider council rely on us for certain things. So I think it's quite important we get feedback from them that, you know, to see how they feel that function is going. And yeah, like other councillors, I've got plenty of opinions on this report and ways of doing things differently. But I think, you know, in the interest of time, and it's a very, very long report, it's probably not worthwhile getting into the details of that tonight. But yeah, I think it's definitely a good discussion for a future meeting.
Thank you very much. Diane King.
Yes, I felt slightly differently to that. Whilst I obviously think that all members of the council should be involved in some way, I think for them to be in the first instance, it's such a lot of information. I think it would take us forever to try and collate all the answers and actually come up with a proper solution. Maybe it should come to us first. Even that sounds quite hard work, but and then maybe it could go out to the wider membership in a different format. But that's a personal opinion.
Thank you very much. Imogen Shepherd-Bay.
Hi there. Well, I read through all the report and made a great long list of notes, because I found there was a whole lot of things that I thought we should be doing and that we weren't doing, and all these sorts of, oh really, should we be doing that? I think it wasn't that long a report. I think people probably don't appreciate the level of tech manuals that I normally read through. And I think certainly if the answer is that it goes out as a survey, I've already got loads of answers for it, but I think it's important that I think a lot of people, our councillors, don't really know what we do on audit, and it's probably worth going out with some level of explanation, because they don't know what we do. But I certainly feel it should go to all councillors. Does that make sense?
Thank you very much. Yes. Yeah, no problem. Where are we? Rachel Burgess.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back on the point of how long the report is, and I don't think we should not be doing something because it's hard work for councillors. This is about the effectiveness of this committee, and it's a key committee of the council, so we should be doing what we need to do, whether it's hard work or not. That shouldn't be a reason for not doing something. So I think the survey should go out to all councillors. It's quite likely that a lot of them won't actually respond, but I think it should go out to everyone, and whether it's hard work or not shouldn't be an issue.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I go to Justine? You've had your hand up for some while. Hello, Justine.
Yes, no, sorry, I'm on mute. I'm listening, okay. And really, really encouraged by everyone's enthusiasm. And thing is, you can't do it all. You are an audit committee, but your purpose is to be just under council. You've got this level of overview and scrutiny. It all needs to be refunctioned, and we will talk to you about that, because your level of scrutiny is great, but it's in the wrong place. The audit committee is about an assurance framework. It's about a mapped internal assurance framework, external assurance framework. So there are 3 levels of defence for an organisation. It's internal, external. Okay, I can't remember. But, the whole thing needs to be revised. in all honesty. I've just been working on council for the last 3 months, and not very long, but you know, you're hugely enthusiastic, and goodness, there's so much you can do. And Andrew Moulton, I've been speaking to him since August, since April, and things have moved on.
Thank you very much. Angus, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to come back and defend. I'm not afraid of hard work, Rachel. It's just that with a report as wide as the SIPFA one, I think some guidance of where it's more relevant to us, and really, as Justin has said, making sure we're doing the right things in the right places. But no, I'm not afraid of hard work.
No, absolutely, and I'm so sorry, Chairman, but actually EY runs training courses based on the self-assessment that we sent out. We run training courses, only cost a couple of grand, and it does just refocus. And we did it with Basingstoke, we've done it with other people, and it just does refocus the mind and just refocus and talk about, you know, overview and scrutiny. Oh my goodness, it's not for me, because I'm your external auditor. I'm your critical friend. So let's talk outside this meeting. But we've got so many ideas at a very, I've got so many ideas.
Thank you. Okay. Well, Andrew, I think coming back to you to put some form of a questionnaire survey together based on what's just been said. Perhaps, I don't know, whether or not perhaps it's right in going out to members of this committee first, and then following that, then to the members widely. It'd be nice to have the view of members of this committee having had experience, not that I've had that long of experience. Some members have been much longer than me, but to gauge their views first. I don't know how you do that. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. We move on to 24 forward programme. And this would be, first of all, for our November 23rd meeting, which we've had a number of ideas that have been put forward already, certainly to invite Head of Children's Services, Carol Cummins, which I think is an excellent idea, based on the questions and the points that have been raised tonight. We will also be receiving the year-end annual report, audit report, and of course the SIPFA survey, which we hope will be very interesting. All 87 pages of it, Angus. So, any comments? Anything else that anybody wishes to raise that should come to this committee for next and future meetings? Bob Watson, you have your hand raised.
Yes. Could I just ask that on the 23rd we do prioritise a statement of accounts, because that would be the requirement. We have to sign them off before the end of that month, probably over other items. Yes, okay, that's understandable. No problem there. I take it that Madeline will make note of that to make sure that does get priority. Imogen. Hello, Imogen.
Hello, unmuting. I see we got on there complaints and compliments and things. I would actually like to see something about an inequalities audit. I don't know if it's now is the time to say it, or if it's mad or whatever, but I mentioned it earlier to Keely, but I feel that we should get some reporting back on what's area. Does that make sense? Thank you.
Yep, okay, we can certainly look at that. Whether or not that would be okay for the November meeting, based on the fact that there's a number of other, perhaps, as Bob has already mentioned,
we may need to specify what we want a bit better, but I agree in that case maybe November isn't it, but certainly as part of this audit, I think it should come back. Audit committee, it should come back to us.
Thank you very much. Are there any other proposals for future items? If not, I will say thank you very much to everybody for attending. Thank you for your input, and all have a very good evening. Sorry, Maria, come back.
Yes, Imogen and I have a request that you and Andrew stay on the call just for a couple of minutes after the meeting. Would that be all right?
Yeah, no problem. Okay.
Thank
right.
you. But thank you very much for the meeting.
Thank you very much, everybody, and good night to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good night.